Tom Brady is back and all is right with the NFL universe again, isn't it? Well, week 5 of the 2016 NFL season is officially in the books, and I'm here to talk about it a little bit, so let's get at it. First, in terms of the top stories for the week, for me, you've got the fact now that there's only one undefeated team left, with both the Broncos and the Eagles losing on Sunday. It's the 5-0 Minnesota Vikings that are sitting alone on top of the perch in the NFC and alone amongst undefeated teams in the National Football League. Now, surely you're going to have those knuckleheads that want to sit there and point to the Sam Bradford trade and be like, ha ha ha, ha 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 ha, ha 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 ha. But frankly, based off of how well that defense is playing right now and how little Sam Bradford has actually done or needed to do, did that trade really matter in the grand scheme of things? And the answer is still fucking no. Let's see what happens when they actually need their quarterback to make some big time plays and they don't have to just rely on their defense shutting down opposing quarterbacks who make all types of terrible plays. You obviously had the big story of Tom Brady's return from the 4-game suspension, and he looked great, albeit against the Cleveland Browns, but Gronk got involved. Tom Brady put up big numbers, and the New England Patriots are in the process of steamrolling probably to another AFC championship game. Now, when we look back at the week that was, I've got some winners and I've got some losers. I'll start off with the winners. I got to go with the Buffalo Bills. Credit to Rex Ryan and that team. That 0-2 start, they fire the offensive coordinator. Things could have imploded really quickly. And I have to give credit where credit is due. They've won 3 straight games, and you look at the opponents that they've beaten in the last 3 weeks. They beat Arizona badly at home. Then they went to New England, granted beat a Tom Brady-less New England Patriots team, but they still beat a Bill Belichick coach team on the road, which for Rex Ryan, for all intents and purposes, is his Super Bowl. And then followed that up the next week in a spot that could have been a real letdown game traveling to the West Coast, and they found a way to beat the Rams. So you go in a few weeks span from the Bills being 0-2 and looking like a mess to being 3-2 and looking at a team that could be in the wild card mix all year long. The Bills have to be winners after week number 5. The Steelers, that Jets game. Granted, they were playing in Pittsburgh, but this is still the type of team traditionally the Steelers have struggled with. They didn't struggle with them at all. They dominated them pretty much throughout. Now the Steelers sit all alone atop the AFC North and 4-1, and I think established themselves as a legit contender in the AFC. The Falcons have to be major winners. They have to be. After kind of dominating the Panthers the week before, they go on the road to the Mile High City and they hand it to the Denver Broncos. You can say, yeah, they were starting Paxton Lynch and not Trevor Siemian, but I don't know how much of a difference it would have made on that day. You got the Atlanta Falcons at 4-1 behind MVP candidate Matt Ryan. They look good right now. Will they maintain? Will they hold? Only time will tell. But they're playing some really good football right now. And then you got to look at the Dallas Cowboys. Cincinnati comes into town, a solid, respectable team, and the Cowboys jump all over them and frankly dominate them. And Prescott continues to show why he needs to be the starter the rest of the year. Ezekiel Elliott goes roughshod over him. I mean, this Cowboys team 4-1, they're legit right now. I don't know if they're Super Bowl contenders, mind you, but they're legit contenders to win the NFC East. That's for damn sure. In terms of the losers this week, you got to look at the Dolphins. They lose to a bad Tennessee Titans team, and now the Dolphins are sitting at 1-4. The Baltimore Ravens, after the 3-0 start, are starting to come crashing down to earth a little bit. And what's particularly bad about that is this is their second straight home loss. They lose to Oakland, and they come back the next week, and they lose to Washington. On top of that, it's got to be particularly embarrassing to Harbaugh because being a special teams guy, seeing Jamison Crowder take a kickback for a touchdown, and that kind of being the difference in the game. Now the Ravens are at 3-2, and they got to wonder if the bottom's going to start to fall off from under them. But the biggest losers of week number 5 have to be the Carolina Panthers. You've got a bad Bucs team at home on Monday night. Granted, you don't have your league MVP in Cam Newton, but you got to figure out a way to win that game. And instead, you lose a home game on Monday night, and now you're sitting at 1-4. For a team that looked like it should have had a clear path through at least the NFC South and should have still been in position to be a contender this year, there's all types of problems all over the place. I mean, they even got a really good game on the ground out of Cameron Artis-Payne and a huge game through the air from Greg Olsen. But if it's not Derek Anderson turning the ball over in ridiculous ways to the defense, getting kind of run over by Jacquizz Rodgers and giving up big plays to Mike Evans, I mean, there's just holes all over the place on both sides of the ball for this team. And they better hurry up and figure it out. Because if they don't, they're going to be sitting on the sidelines come playoff time. Now, in terms of at this point in time in the season, I think you can also start to paint a little bit of a picture in terms of some of the award candidates potentially, although there's still a lot of football left to be played. Early on in terms of Rookie of the Year contenders, you've probably got three on the offensive side of the ball that really stand out, and those are who we'll be talking about. You've got on the Cowboys both Dak Prescott and Ezekiel Elliott, and then on the Eagles you've got Carson Wentz. When you look at the Cowboys, the infrastructure surrounding Dak Prescott and Ezekiel Elliott is really good. Most notably that offensive line, gives Dak Prescott a lot of protection and opens up a lot of gaping holes for Ezekiel Elliott. But those two guys have still played really, really well, and they've still made plays at times when that offensive line hasn't done a great job in front of them either. In terms of either one of them really getting a nod over the other at this point, I think it's Ezekiel Elliott that helps Dak Prescott more than Dak Prescott helps Ezekiel Elliott. So I'd probably lean on Zeke a little bit more as the more likely Rookie of the Year candidate out of the two. But they might kind of cancel themselves out in terms of this award because they both play in the same backfield on the same America's team. Right now, I'd probably give the tip of the cap to Carson Wentz with the 3-1 Philadelphia Eagles. Now, granted, Carson Wentz is benefiting from an Eagles defense that played really, really well the early portion of the season. There's still a lot of football left to be played. But you feel like he has to take more of the burden on the offensive side of the ball than a Dak Prescott and or Ezekiel Elliott does. So right now, after 5 weeks, Carson Wentz is my leader for Offensive Rookie of the Year. Zeke is 2, and then Dak Prescott's got to be a really close number 3. In terms of MVP candidates, I think you've got 3 right now that stand out above the rest. And again, it's early on in the year, so this could very well be subject to change. Number 3 on the list, I think, is Big Ben. Talking about a Steelers team that's sitting at 4-1. They are atop the AFC North. They look like a legit contender in the AFC. Big Ben's averaging about 300 yards passing a game, averaging 3 touchdown passes per game. This looks like a legit team. And the scary thing about this offense, you've just gotten Le'Veon Bell back in the fold, so he's still trying to figure his way out. You've got Sammy Coates trying to develop into a Martavis Bryant type of weapon on the outside as a vertical threat opposite Antonio Brown. We might not have seen the best out of the Steelers offense yet. And as good and explosive and consistent as this offense is, imagine if they get any better, how scary they could be. I wouldn't be surprised if all said and done if Big Ben did end up being the NFL's most valuable player this year. Because he's going to put up some numbers in that offense. Right now, though, I think there are 2 guys that are more valuable to their team's causes. And it's frankly kind of close. I give the edge to one guy over the other by a little bit, but not that much. Number 2 on my list is Derek Carr. You're talking about a guy that's thrown for almost 1,400 yards and 11 touchdowns through 5 weeks. But more impressive, the Raiders are at 4-1, and their defense isn't playing any really well at all. Frankly, their defense hasn't even shown up. Derek Carr makes big plays in big-time clutch situations to help his team get to this 4-1 spot. And what's in particular impressive about a young quarterback like Derek Carr is that the Raiders are 3-0 on the road. So he's playing well on the road. He's winning tough games on the road. And they've played some tough opponents. And in fact, I believe their one loss in the season was at home to the 4-1 Atlanta Falcons. So Derek Carr is definitely a legit MVP candidate at this point. And if you look at how bad that Raiders defense has been through different periods of the first 5 weeks of the season, you could make a strong argument based off of where the Raiders have been and what they've been as an organization, where they currently find themselves, that Derek Carr right now is the NFL's most valuable player. Not going to get a large argument there from me. Right now, though, the number 1 guy on my list, the leading MVP candidate, I think has to be Matt Ryan. He's thrown for over 1,700 yards, 12 touchdowns, only 2 interceptions. Matty Ice is making some big plays. He's staying cool under pressure. And you look at it, it's not just Julio Jones. Granted, Julio had the 300 yards receiving against Atlanta, but he spread it out to other guys. And it's been some sure about Tevin Coleman and Devontae Freeman, both in the backfield and as pass catchers. But when you look at some of the teams that the Falcons have been able to beat, they went to Oakland and won there. They beat Carolina, who had Cam Newton. Then they went to Denver and pretty much handed it to the Denver Broncos. You talk about a 4-1 Falcons team that are surprise leaders atop the NFC South. And Matt Ryan is having, arguably, early on in the year, his best season he's had as an NFL quarterback. And just looking at it, like I said, it's really close right now between him and Derek Carr through 5 weeks. But I'll give a little bit of the edge to Matt Ryan because I'm going to recognize some of the teams that they've beaten and just how consistent his play has been throughout the first 5 weeks of the season. At this stage of his career, I did not ever think I was going to allude to Matt Ryan as being an MVP candidate. But as it stands right now, heading into Week 6 of the NFL season, Matt Ryan is the leader to be the 2016 NFL Most Valuable Player. How about them apples?